Good morning. Thank you for joining us at the HSPT prep session. We are putting this together for you to help you feel comfortable and being prepared and doing your best as you for when you take the test. Some key strategies on how to prepare to do your best. Time management. As you do for all of the things that you need to study for at school, make a study plan. Study concepts in small blocks of time. And make sure that you use the best of your time. Find a quiet space. And don't try to study when you're tired or anxious. You will not retain what you need to retain. And team up with others. Sometimes talking about a concept with others, whether there's someone here that you know that will be taking the test or someone that isn't able to join us, it's always good to talk about a concept with someone else. Modality choices. We all learn and remember things differently. Try visualizing a concept on paper, color coding notes, draw an image or a diagram. Use flashcards, mnemonic devices such as creating a short list where every item starts with the same letter can help you retain some information. And practice, practice, practice. Pay attention to questions you continuously get wrong, guesses that you made were correct, and how and why you thought you were able to do that, and questions that you found to be difficult. Test strategies include narrowing down your choices. Predict the answer. Before you even start looking at the answers provided, it's a good idea to predict the answer. Generally, even if the answer is not word for word, you're likely to determine your best choice. The chances of guessing an answer correctly depends on the number of choices you have. For instance, if you have 5 answer choices, you have a 20% chance to choose the correct answer. Once you've eliminated any choices that you're confident are wrong, select the first remaining choice as your answer. And pace yourself. Don't let the time allotted for a section of a test distract you. Don't take too long on any one question. On easier questions, be careful not to rush. If going ahead of time, you may want to slow your pace so you can stay consistent. Have a guessing plan. Yes, you should be guessing. This test, your score will be depending upon how many you do get correct. Try elimination strategies prior to your guessing. Focus on key words to jog your memory on related topics and start the guessing process as soon as you decide you can't answer the question. And most of all, don't panic. Do your best to stay calm and keep moving. Take deep breaths and going through elimination steps you practice can help break through a stress barrier. Now it's time to take the test. What does the first part of the language arts part look like on the HSPT? Well, there are 60 multiple choice questions and you have to answer them within 25 minutes. Study your vocabulary and your grammar, and I cannot stress enough, your vocabulary you need to practice. You need to know what words mean. You need to know if they're opposites. You need to know if they're a synonym or antonyms. You need to know if they have word relationships. When you're working on analogies, know your vocabulary so you can determine what those word relationships are. And if you can classify those words, you'll never know if you don't know what the word means if they don't belong within a word group. Logic statements are followed by a logic question. You simply read the statement carefully and answer the question as best possible. For composition and for reading, know your literary terms, parts of passage, parts of an essay. It's important to know the sequencing of what happens in a composition. For verbal skills. So here's a little sample of what you'll see. I'm going to give you 20 seconds to try to determine what the relationship is with these words. So for number 1, insatiable. Insatiable, you need to know what the word insatiable means, and it means impossible to satisfy. So which of those words down below, A, B, C, or D, means almost impossible to satisfy? Well, D would be the best word, but best choice, unsatisfied. B would be the opposite, correct? It would be insatiable would not mean content. That would be the opposite. Adherent. Well, you have to know what the word inherent means. Adherent means to support something. So the opposite of adherent would be antagonist. Again, you need to know what an antagonist is. An antagonist is somebody who doesn't support anything, whether it be in a story or in a conversation. Protrude. Protrude means to extend beyond a surface. So the best answer for here would be something that swells extends beyond its surface. If your arm is swelling, your arm is extended out. Unkempt. Unkempt means that untidy, you're not together. Unkempt, the opposite of unkempt, would be unblemished, because if you're unblemished, that means everything is perfect. It's time to take the test with analogies again. Let's go over a little bit about, again, studying your vocabulary, use flashcards, and use the free vocabulary websites that you might find in your search engine. This section requires you to find the relationship between two words. Tall is to short, as large is to small. There's obviously relationships there in size. So tall and short are opposites, large and small are opposites. So to understand the relationship, it's sometimes good to make a short sentence using each word. For example, wood is to fire as. What is the choice? Farmer is to a cow, gasoline is to an engine. The possible sentence to determine the correct answer would be, wood is burned in a fire, a farmer feeds a cow. So therefore, your obvious answer, your correct answer would be B, gas is consumed or burned in an engine. The language skill portion of the test is the mechanics of language. So you need to know parts of speech. You need to know what the job, I call it, of every word in a sentence is. So nouns, you have proper nouns, which usually begin with which always begin with capital letters. Common nouns, sugar, candy, they're just everyday nouns. Singular nouns would be common nouns that are singular, and plural would be more than one. So singular noun coat, plural coats. Pronouns. Pronouns can be used as subjects or as objects. As a subject, the pronouns used as subjects are he, she, it, they, you, and I. And when they're an objective, it's you, me, him, her, and it. Possessive and interrogative nouns. Possessive nouns mean that somebody owns something, right? That's mine, you, yours, his, her book, hers, its. An interrogative or asking questions, usually who, whom, whose, what, which. Indefinite nouns, those are nouns that you cannot put a number to. So everything, everybody, nobody, either, someone are indefinite nouns. And then these nouns and pronouns can be used as subjects, as we spoke a little bit earlier. Compound noun, a subject would be two nouns that would be joined together by a conjunction. Here is coffee and tea, and is the conjunction. Indefinite, again, a pronoun that would be used as a subject. Everyone is going to the store, somebody told me this, are all used as subjects. Pronouns, again, subjects, he, she, it, they, similar to what we mentioned earlier, and nouns, similar to what we used earlier. The car sped down the driveway. The noun in that, as used as a subject, would be car. Verbs to know. Now, there are many verbs, many verb tenses, many things that you should know about verbs. But I assure you, if you know these four things, you will be able to get through most of the mechanical questions on this test that regard to usage. So verb tenses. They show when the action in the sentence takes place. He is walking, he walked, he will walk to the store. He is walking is present tense. He walked is past tense. He will walk to the store is future. Irregular verbs. Those are verbs that don't necessarily follow the same rules, and although they have a present and a past tense, they're not spelled the same way. If you look at walking, walked, and walk to the store, he will walk to the store. They all have walk. But for irregular verbs, become and became, awake, awoke, begin, began. Those tenses change as far as their spelling and their meaning. Action verbs. Describing something that a person, animal, thing, or a force of nature can do. It's action, it's active. Ran, run, runs, climb, climbs, climbs, sing, sang, sung. Those are all action verbs. Linking verbs. Those don't describe an action. And so anything that doesn't describe an action, there's 20 linking verbs: is, was, were, are, been, and. Those are all samples of the 20 linking verbs that you will find in its usage in a sentence. Adjectives. I think most of you know what adjectives are. They describe a person, place, or thing. Basically, here's some describing an object. Pretty dress. The dress can be pretty. It could be old. It could be long. A coat can be, again, old or red or tattered. A face can be sad, silly. So those are all ways of describing things. Adverbs. Adverbs modify a verb, other adverbs, an adjective that relates to time, place, and manner. So most of the times you'll see an adverb that ends in ly. He walked quickly. How did he walk? He walked quickly. The beautifully painted picture was missing. Beautifully describes picture, but it also modifies the verb painted. Coordinating conjunctions. Here is something that would help you remember. If you use the acronym FANBOYS, you'll remember all the coordinating conjunctions: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. The goat and the dog went up the hill. And is, in this case, the coordinating conjunction. Subject-verb agreement. Very, very important. There will be a few of these as far as the in the usage questions. You have to have, when you have a plural subject, plural noun, single subject, single noun. The kittens were cute. The house on the hill is a mansion. Now, it would sound silly and be silly if you said the kitten were cute. The houses on the hill is a mansion. It just, they don't agree with each other, so just pay attention to those things. And then, of course, the types of sentences. This will be relating to punctuation mostly, and also when it comes to some of the types of spelling and capitalization. So declarative statement is ends with a period. It also is just simply a statement. I went to the store. An interrogative is a question, ends with a question mark, and it asks the question, so did you go to the store? An imperative sentence is a command sentence and it ends with a period. Go to the store. And an exclamatory sentence is one that ends in an exclamation point. I went to the store. And now for the reading and figurative language piece. These are some things that I just, if you know this, you should be able to get through most of what the figurative language questions that you might be asked, as well as help you with some of the reading portion of the test. So comparing someone or something to a person, event, and a history of literature is allusion. An Achilles heel, that's a weakness a person may have. So you can say, you know, he's like an Achilles heel when I ask him to do something. He just, there's, you're comparing somebody to an event or a piece of literature. Alliteration, strong words that, well, let's just say a string of words that begin with the same sound or letter. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Another sample would be Sally sold seashells at the seashore. You know, these are just fun things, and I'm sure especially most of you have been learned this in the past. Metaphor and a simile are just simply two ways that we compare two unlike things. The difference is a metaphor compares two unlike things without using like or as. So the bird was an arrow in the sky. The bird is being compared to as an arrow, and in simile, when you use like or as. So he is as smart as a fox versus he is a fox. Personification, giving human attributes to an inanimate object. The key screeched as it opened the door. Now, can a key screech like a human? No, and you just, the sentence implies that the key actually, it has a personality and it opened the door. Now, he sounded like a broken record is another sample. Hyperbole is an overstatement or an exaggeration. He jumped 20 feet in the air when he heard the news. Well, I've never known anyone to jump 20 feet, so in my mind, that would be an exaggeration. The reading comprehension test portion. Know your literary devices, your figurative language, and again, your vocabulary. Vocabulary, vocabulary, vocabulary. Some of the ways that you want to address how to get through this section is skim first, identify the thesis statement, identify what the supporting topic sentence are. What are the key concepts? Look for context clues, supporting details that provide evidence for the main points of the passage. And then identify, once you've skimmed through, identify if the passage presents a problem, is it chronological order, has cause and effect, are there opinions with facts and predictions, what's the purpose of the author? Can you identify a theme, a logical conclusion? And just always remember the parts of a passage always include an introduction, body paragraphs, topic sentence, and a conclusion. If you remember that, you'll be able to get through the reading. I don't suggest that you go to the questions first, because the questions and the answers first, and then go back to try and find them. A lot of what these passages have are inferences, and you have to read for understanding. So going to the questions and the answers first is not a benefit. So I hope that's helped you with a little bit about the language arts portion of this test. I'm going to ask Ms. Pacherio to start beginning to share a little bit about the math section, which has a lot of components to it and things for you to be able to practice.
All right, so we're going to talk about the math portion of the test, and there are two sections, okay? But before we talk about those two sections, a few things that you should know is you should brush up on your math facts, okay? Just like you should know your vocabulary as best as you can for the language part, your math facts are going to be the basics for this test. So what you can do between now and then, everyone's math teachers have different rules in terms of calculator usage. If you are using a calculator in your math class, try to avoid using it when you can. Anything that you can do to help you build your mental math facts and your recall, just to keep you calmer during the test would be great. So try to avoid that calculator. When you're working, you definitely want to show your work on the test book. Okay, write it right on the test book, mark everything up, highlight. If there's an important word that you see on the problem, highlight that. Okay, draw attention to anything that you think you need to. And you are not going to know how to do every problem, and that's okay. What you want to do between now and the time that you take the test is be able to do the problems that you know as accurately as possible. This test is being given to students all across the country, and everybody is in a different place. So you're going to see problems from every different part of math in elementary school and algebra that there is, because we want to get an idea of what you're good at. Okay, so it's okay not to know everything. If you don't know the answer, estimate, take a guess, knock one answer out, and instead of having 4 choices, you only have 3 to guess with. And I also wrote check your answer here, but you're going to see you might not quite have enough time to check your answers. Okay, but if you do, think about, I got 20 as an answer. Does that make sense? So the first part of the test is quantitative, and I just realized I lost the little title there. So the quantitative section of the test is 30 minutes long, and there's 52 questions, which means you have to do about 2 questions per minute. So that's about 30 seconds per question. That's not a lot of time. Okay, so again, you want to focus on the ones that you can do and guess on the ones you're not sure of. And you want to do that as quickly as you can. So there's 3 types of questions here. The first type is sequences. And there's going to be about 22 to 23 questions on sequences. All right, and that's just going to be something like what number comes next. And we'll do a few practice ones of these after we go over the basic groupings. Then you're going to see comparisons. There's 19 to 20 questions of those. And you're going to simplify expressions and you're going to put them in the correct order. Then there's going to be computations. That's just where you're going to do a whole bunch of operations. You're going to add, subtract, multiply, divide. Okay, probably 2 or more in one problem. And there's a whole bunch of math terms here. All right, these are all the different concept areas that you're going to see on this test. All right, anything from as basic as add, subtract, multiply, and dividing with integers, decimals, and fractions, to something from algebra like slope of a line, which a lot of you might not have experienced yet. And that, again, that's okay. All right. There will also be some geometry topics like angles in a triangle, vertical angles. You might see some Roman numerals, okay, or comparing objects and measurement. All right, there'll also be some graphs and charts. So we're going to look at a few different kinds of problems from each of these sections. So I have two problems here. I'm going to give you 30 seconds starting now to try to answer those. Okay, so on the first problem, hopefully you're looking at the sequence and you're looking at the first two numbers, 87 and 76. And you want to see how did they get from 87 to 76? Did the numbers get bigger? Did they get smaller? So if they got bigger, you want to be looking at maybe an addition or a subtraction, addition or multiplication pattern. If they got smaller, we're looking at subtraction or division. So from 87 to 76, I can see that I subtracted 9. Well, if I subtract 9 from 76, will I get 65? And I will. So our pattern is to subtract 9. So hopefully when you looked at this problem, you got that the answer was 54, choice B. Okay? So that one was probably one of the more basic because there's only one type of pattern happening. It's the same number being subtracted all the time. But that's not always going to be the case. So number 2 is showing you a slightly more difficult pattern. So first of all, this is scary because we have decimals and they throw in the negative sign in there, making it doubly intimidating. But if you look, they all have negatives. So I'm going to kind of ignore the negative sign just for a little bit and focus on the numbers. I went from a 0.4 to 1.6. And again, if I ignore the negative, the decimal value got larger. And then 1.6 to 4.8, it got larger again. So I'm thinking probably adding or multiplying. But from 0.4 to 0.16, I would be adding 1.2. And from 1.6 to 4.8, I would be adding a much larger number. That larger number would be, let's see, if I subtract, I'm going to get 3.2. I don't quite see a pattern there. So maybe there's something else. Maybe I multiply. Well, if I multiply by 4, 0.4 times 0.4 will give me 1.6. But in order to get from 1.6 to 0.4 to 4.8, I have to multiply by 3. Oh, so maybe this pattern. What if I multiply 4.8 by 2? So now I see a pattern within a pattern. So my pattern is multiplication, but it's not multiplication of the same number. It's multiplication of numbers that are decreasing. So my next number would have to be multiplied by 1. And this was hard enough, so at least my multiplication is easy. And my answer is just C. So you can also have a sequence that has sort of 2 patterns embedded. So I'm going to let you look at number 3 for just a few seconds. Okay, so again, I'm going through this kind of quick because you want to be able to look at these problems and decide, is this something I can do? Is this something I can really kind of try to figure out? Or is this a question that I'm going to have to kind of glance over and sort of guess? So I look here for going to 16, we got larger. Oh, but then we bounced down to 5. That's weird. 5 went to 25, got larger, but then it went down to 6. So what's happening is that there's 2 patterns in here. We have this pattern of 4, then 5, and then 6. I don't even have to think about the next pattern. I can probably guess that the next number is going to be 7. But just so you know what the pattern is, these numbers in between, 16 is 4 squared, and 25 is 5 squared, and 36 is 6 squared. Okay, so what they did was they squared the number, then they put the next number in the numerical sequence. Squared that number, went to the next number 6 in the numerical sequence. Okay, so I'm going to give you another maybe 20 seconds to look at number 4. Okay, so we've got a pattern here of decreasing. Each of these numbers is decreasing. They're decreasing by different values. This one decreased by 200. This one decreased by 50. Then by 75. Wow, this doesn't make any sense. I don't see a pattern there. So it's not subtraction. So I'm looking at 400 and 200, and it looks like they divided by 2. But if I divide 200 and by 2, I won't get 150. But if I look here, I can see, oh, well, these were divided by 2. But if I divide 75 by 25, so I need to find that pattern in the middle. So now if you look between these 2 numbers, these went down by 50. I can subtract by 50. And now look, here's the same thing here. I can subtract by 50. So this pattern was divide by 2 and subtract by 50. So divide by 2, subtract 50. Divide by 2, subtract by 50. I'm down to divide by 2, and 25 divided by 2 is going to give me 12.5. Okay? So these are just basic computation problems. They're making it a little bit more challenging because you're the one that has to do all the thinking to figure out what the problem or what the computation was. Okay? So they might also throw some letters in here, and this looks a little intimidating, but it's really not that bad. We can focus on just the numbers first. We went from 8 to 10, so that we added by 2. We go from 10 to 30, well, that's add 20, or it's multiply by 3. And if we go from 30 to 32, oh, well, that's add 2. So we did add 2, we did multiply by 3, then we did add 2. So I wonder, is multiply by 3 going to be in our answer? And 32 times 3 is 96. So I could just stop right there and pick that as an answer. But if you're not sure, look at your letters, okay? Use your alphabet. If we start at B, we get C, D, E. Oh, F is the 4th one. If we start at F, G, H, I, oh, J is the 4th one, okay? And keep doing that. If you start at N, O, P, Q, oh, R is the 4th letter, so they both work. But again, if you kind of narrow it down just by looking at one part of the pattern, go with it. Okay, so this might be a little more intimidating than the last part. This is comparisons. So this section is going to require you to perform calculations. And then after you perform those calculations, then you have to decide which category it fits into. And one of the ways that they're going to give you those ways of comparing or organizing could be by using symbols. Okay, they also, in the next problem I give you, they're going to do the same thing but using words. So the first thing you have to figure out is what A, B, and C are. So without even looking at the choices, what I'm going to have to do here is figure out 5/6 of 36. So hopefully we all know that 5/6 of 36, of is just a key word that means multiplication. So hopefully we know we're putting a multiplication symbol there. We're turning our 36, putting it over 1. And cross reduction and multiplication is a huge time saver. So if this is something you're not comfortable with, you should really work on it, not just for this test, but for math classes in general in high school. 6 and 36 have a common factor of 6. So I'm going to divide 6 by 6 is 1, and 36 by 6 is 6. We're left with 5 times 6 in the numerator, which is 30. 1 times 1 in the denominator, which is 1. So I know that choice A has a value of 30. See how I'm doing all my work right on the paper here? That's what you're going to do when you're taking your test. 1/3 times 60, I'm going to put that over 1. I'm going to look for my cross reducing because this test is given to you without a calculator. So they know you're human and they know you're only in 8th grade looking to go into 9th grade. So it has to be reasonable numbers. So cross reducing, I'm pretty sure 99% of the time is going to work. 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 60 divided by 3 is 20, leaving us with 20 times 1 in the numerator, 1 times 1 on the bottom, and that has a value of 20. My last one, 4/7 of 49. Again, of means times. Can't say that enough. I'm going to look in the crosses to reduce. 7 and 49 both have a common factor of 7, and when I divide, I'll get a 1 here. 49 divided by 7 is 7. Multiplication facts are huge. So if you have any times tables that you're not comfortable with, like the 7s or the 8s or the 9s, go back over those, brush up on those skills, okay? It'll help you feel much more calm when you're taking a test. Taking a test is anxiety-filled for almost anyone, okay? And when you go into a room with some people that you don't know, you might feel a little bit more anxious. So knowing these facts, it's going to make you feel just a little bit more calm. So this is 28. So I'm going to look at my numbers. I'm going to organize it the way that I think it makes most sense. So I know that B is the smallest, C comes next, and A is the largest. So A is the biggest. But none of my choices are organized that way. It's definitely not B, because A and B are not equal, and it's definitely not D, they're not equal. So I've got to choose between A and B. And I said A is my largest, right? So if I look here, it says A is greater than C, because the largest side is pointing to A. Oh, well, that's good, because I said A is my largest, and C is greater than B. So this is my answer. My answer is C. So this is a very intimidating question, but they're really just asking you multiplication of fractions. But the wording and the setup can make it more difficult. Okay, so this is another example of the same type of problem, but here they're using it in words. So that might be easier for you, okay? No, sorry. Examine A, B, and C, and find the best answer. That's find, obviously. Okay, so I have 1/4, 24%, and 0.24. Well, 1/4, hopefully we know, is 0.25. And 24%, well, we usually use a percent sign just in advertising, so hopefully we're comfortable with the percent being changed to a decimal by moving the decimal point 2 places to the left. So this is 0.24. And then, well, C was given to me as a decimal, so I might as well leave it since everybody else is a decimal. Oh, look at that. B and C are exactly the same. All right, well, A, B, and C are not all equal. B is less than A. That's true. And equal to C. Okay, so it's choice B. All right, So that's the comparing problem. So you're going to have quite a few problems like that that look more intimidating than they really are. And the last section on quantitative comparisons is computations. On the computation part, you're just doing some math. Sorry there. You're doing some math, and they might embed it in another topic, okay? So for example, this first problem is about your conversions. And this conversion is about quarts. So maybe when you're doing this, you're gonna highlight the word quarts, and hopefully you're gonna jog your memory and say, okay, what do I know about a quart? Well, a quart are those tiny little skinny milk cartons, and the gallon is that really large one, and there are 4 quarts in 1 gallon. So if I have 6 gallons, well, every time I have a gallon, I have 4 quarts. So this is just 24, because 6 times 4 is 24. Okay, take a moment to look at the second problem here. 17/100ths can be written as. Okay, hopefully we know that when you have your decimal, after the decimal, this first place is called the tenths. And that second place is called the hundredths. So I want 17/100ths. That means the 7 has to land in the hundredths, and I'm going to write the 1 in the front. So it's very clear that C is going to be our answer. Okay? So far all of these problems, we really haven't done anything that was even algebra related. Okay? Just a lot of different math skills that you've been exposed to over the years, and some you're going to remember better than others. That's the first section of math, okay? The second section of math is the longest section on the test, and there are 45 minutes to do 64 questions. So on this section, you have a little bit more time per question that you can spend on it. You're going to perform mathematical operations here, okay? You're going to apply knowledge. You're going to have to use reasoning skills and problem solving skills. And these are the various topics that you're going to see here, okay? This is the section that does list some algebra in here, some statistics and probability, maybe some exponents and radicals, okay? So we're going to try to touch on a little bit of all those things in the last few minutes that I have left. Time flies when you're doing math. So what number subtracted from 18 makes 5 more than 11? So math is a language. So you're kind of being tested in language arts here too. So what number is subtracted from 18? We want to convert this sentence, this English sentence, into a math sentence. So I have to have a number that's taken away from 18, which means I need to have 18 minus x. Makes 5 more than 11. Makes is another word that means equals, okay? Anytime you see the word is, that's your equal sign. Makes, I personally don't use very often in math language, but that's okay. 5 more than 11 means I have 11 plus 5. Now, you can probably play around with this and figure it out mathematically without changing it to an algebra problem like I did. So whatever you're more comfortable with is fine. I'm going to solve it like I set it up with an algebra problem. And I can even stop right here because 18 minus what number is 16? I don't have to solve it anymore. That clearly is a 2. Okay? So you have to start it by doing a little bit of math, writing an equation, or you can kind of guess and check every choice too. Okay, the second one, we have here that 7 and a little 2. Hopefully you know that 7 squared means 7 times 7. So it says what number subtracted from. So when you have subtraction, your order is huge. It makes a huge difference. What number is subtracted from what number? I'm just going to use X as a placeholder. There's that word makes again. 20%. Hopefully you're all yelling to multiply because it says of. So let's see, this looks intimidating, but 7 times 7 is 49. 20% of 50. So hopefully we remember that 20% is 0.2. Here's my 50. I'm going to do my little multiplication over here. I don't want to make a mistake. I'm going to multiply that 2 to everything, and then I have a decimal, so I have to move my decimal one place. So this is 10. Oh, okay, so now I'm not even going to solve it using my algebra skills anymore. I'm just going to look and say, well, this has to be 39. Okay, so you see how they mix an exponent and a percentage in the same problem. Okay, I'm going to give you about 40 seconds to attack at least one of those problems. Okay, so on the first problem, we're given some information about a can of soup or a serving of soup. So 1/3 cup of soup has 10 grams of sodium. So 1/3, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write this in my own handwriting. 1/3 of a cup equals 10 grams. 1 can of soup is 2 cups, and I need to know how much sodium is in 1 can. So we've got fractions here. You can draw yourself a picture. Some of you might be comfortable with doing bar models. Or you can just think about, if I have 1/3 of a cup, how many of those do I need to just make 1 cup? I'm not going to worry about 2 cups, but 1/3 of a cup is 10 grams. I need 3 1/3 cups, right? I would think about making something, think about cooking. I'd have to scoop 1/3 3 times to get a full cup. So if I have 3 of my 1/3 cups, that's going to give me 1 cup. But I need to have 2 cups. So that means I'm going to have to double this. So I need 6 1/3 cups to give me 2 cups. So if 1/3 has 10 grams and I need 6 1/3 cups, 6 times 10 is going to give me 60. So number 4, we have a subtraction problem and decimals and negative numbers. So you can attack this a few different ways. Everyone's teacher is going to talk about integers differently, okay? But what I would tell you is I'm going to do both methods. So here we have this problem. If you are attacking integers by using keep, change, change, I'm going to need to change my color for this. You would keep the first number the same. You would change it to addition, and you would get the opposite of the second number. So now they're both positives, and it's addition. So, oh my goodness, that made it so much easier. But remember, when you're adding with decimals, you need to line up your decimal point. Take the extra second to write in those zeros so that your numbers are lined up. We're going to add these and have our carry. And here's our answer. It's choice C. Okay? If you're looking at this problem and your teacher has told you that anytime you have two negatives next to each other, that those two negatives, they just turn into a positive as well. Okay? So same problem, attacking it two different ways, but it's still an addition problem. All right. So we have two problems here. Again, I want to give you a minute to try these on your own. I'll give you slightly less than a minute. Okay, so that was 45 seconds. Okay, just to give you an idea of timing. In 45 seconds, you want to do at least one of those problems and hopefully start the other. Okay? So if 2/3 of a number is 60, so I'm going to change this to a math sentence. If 2/3 of means multiply, I'm going to use a dot for multiplying. Of a number, well, I don't know what the number is, so I'm going to put an X there. Math symbol for is, well, that's an equals. I'm going to stop right there because that comma is kind of like a pause. So I'm going to stop there for a minute and just rewrite this in my own handwriting. 2/3 times X equals 60. Now, when I have a number and a letter being written together, I don't write the dot because you don't need to. So I need to solve this problem here. I can divide both sides by 60. I'm going to do that. Personally, I would multiply by the reciprocal, which is 3/2. But because you're only finishing or starting 8th grade right now, I'm going to do it this way. But if you want to multiply by 3/2, please do that. That is a much better skill for entering high school math. So X equals 60 divided by 2/3. When you have division with fractions, you change to multiplication, and you multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, so if you were multiplying by 3/2, you kind of took your little shortcut, which I love. I'm going to do my cross reducing. 60 and 2 have a common factor of 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 60 divided by 2 is 30. So my answer here for X is 90. But be careful. Be really, really careful. My number is 90. And look, 90 is a choice that's so mean and it's wrong. Because look, I have to see what's happening after my pause. It says, what is half of that number? So now I need to take 90 and divide it by 2. And my answer is actually 45. Okay, so make sure you're reading the whole problem. Don't get excited. If you see your answer, if you're not done reading, it's not your answer yet. Okay, dogs and cats at the local pet store, their ratio is 4:3. So I'm going to write 4:3, and I'm going to put a little reminder because it says dogs first. Oh, I should go up here, dogs to cats. Dogs is 4, cats is 3. If there are 16 dogs, so I'm going to put the 16 right underneath the dogs. There we go. How many dogs and cats are there in total? Well, I have no idea how many cats there are, but I can see that to get from 4 to 16, I have to multiply by 4. And in ratios, a ratio is really just a comparison of two numbers, which is also a fraction. And whatever I do to one side, I need to do to the other. So 3 times 4 is 12. Oh my gosh, 12 isn't an answer, but that's okay because it says how many dogs and cats are there in total. So I have 16 dogs, 12 cats. So if I were to find out the total, I have 28 animals. And thankfully, 28 is a choice. Okay? So there's a lot of reading skills that are in these math questions. Okay, we have 3 problems here. I'm going to give you a minute, and I think that's generous because there's not a lot of math here. Okay, so the number 7 has the same value as, well, 7 to the first is just 7. So this is our answer. But I'm going to take a minute and tell you about the other answers too, because you might need to know that for a different question that's on your actual test. 7 to the 0, any number raised to the 0 power is going to have a value of 1. Okay, there's a whole long explanation of that you should know, but we don't have time to get into that. 1 to the 7th, okay, and I'm actually going to write this out because this is a common mistake. 1 to the 7th, an exponent tells you how many times to write the base. And some of us might jump and just say 7 right there, but it's not, because I need to write the number 1 7 times. And 1 times itself 7 times is going to give us an answer of 1. And then negative 1 to the 7th, there's really nothing I can do to simplify that, and that's not my answer anyway. But I did want to go over what happens when you have an exponent of 0, and then also 1 to any power is 1. Number 9 has a weird little symbol on it that kind of looks like a check with a line going across. That symbol is a square root sign. Hopefully you've seen it. A square root symbol is kind of the opposite of squaring a number. So this question, that little symbol is really asking you what number multiplied by itself will give you 144. Okay, so again, knowing that you're humans and you're young humans, you're not going to know some of these larger numbers. They're giving you one that's reasonable, okay, one that's on your multiplication chart. So what number multiplied by itself will give you 144? That answer is a 12. Okay, but that can be an intimidating symbol to look at if you haven't been using square roots very long. Number 10, the best description for line segment AC. So you have a picture to the right of a circle, and C is the center of your circle. And A and B are referring to the points where the line and the circle touch. So AC is just this part of the line. All right, so this is basic vocabulary. So just to remind you, AC is your radius, okay? So AC is the radius of the circle. Anytime you're going from the center of the circle to the edge, that's your radius. I'm going to get another color here and point out to you that from A to B, that's your diameter, okay? Any line that goes from one edge to the circle and hits the center is your diameter. Circumference is like the perimeter of the circle, okay? Circumference is the measure around the circle. So if I were to trace from A and draw all the way around to A, that's my circumference, but we call it, it's my perimeter of a circle, but we call it circumference, okay? So the answer here is C, and I didn't even talk about D. D, secant, you're not gonna know what a secant is. You don't need to know what a secant is. That wouldn't be the answer. But for those of you that are curious, a secant is a line that's gonna go through and hit the circle in two places like that, okay? But that is an advanced algebra topic, so you don't need to worry about that. They just needed a filler. Okay, 2 questions here that you should be able to get correct. So I'm going to give you a minute. I'll be generous again. So try these 2. We'll see if you can get those correctly. Okay, so express 7/15 as a decimal. We have 2 ways that we can convert a fraction to a decimal. So the easy way would be if I could take 15 and multiply it by something to either give me a denominator of 10 or of 100. And I can't. Okay, there's nothing that's going to multiply my 15 to turn it into a 10 or 100. That's unfortunate because that is the easy way to do this. So that method only works sometimes. If that doesn't work, you need to go to long division. All right. So the first thing that we have to be careful of, because this is a common error, is where do I put the numbers? Okay, 7 divided by 15. 7 is the numerator. 7 goes inside. It's the dividend. 15 is the divisor because we're cutting something into 15 pieces, so the 15 goes there. You should really know why these numbers are going in those positions, and that's why. The 15 is cutting. We're cutting it into 15 slices, so the 15 needs to go outside. Now I'm going to tell you the thing that all your math teachers are going to tell you how to remember. Drop the top into the box, okay? When in doubt, hopefully you remember you drop the top into the box. So the top number goes into our division box. So a quick reminder on long division, no one likes it, but we have to do it. We cannot take 7 and cut it into 15. 15 does not go into 7. So we've got to put a decimal and a 0, maybe 2 or 3. I'm going to start with 2. Once I put that 0 there, I need to transfer that 0 ever so neatly in the same exact spot up to the quotient. Okay, they have to be lined up. Division more than anything requires neatness. 15 cannot go into 7, so I'm going to put a little X because it's not going there, or you could put a 0. Now 15 into 70. 15 times 4 is 60. So 15 times 5 is 75. 5 is too big. I go with the 4. I multiply 4 times 15. I subtract. We ignore the decimal in division. Once the decimal is up in the quotient, we totally ignore it now. Can 15 go into 10? No, it cannot, which is why I have to bring down this other 0. 15 goes into 100. Well, 15 times 5, I already said, was 75, and 15 times 6 is 90. 15 times 6 is 90. So we go with our 0, carry our 3. We're going to subtract. I got a 10 again. Look at my choices and what I have so far. There's a lot of choices that have 0.46. So I need to decide, do I have 0.46? Should I put 0.46 with that bar on top, or 0.467 with that bar? I'm going to bring down one more 0 just so you can really see that once again I have to do 100 divided by 15 would be another 6. I would get 90, and this pattern just continues over and over. So the answer is B, because that bar on top of the 6 is saying that this number is going to happen over and over and over, okay, indefinitely. So that's our choice. They made those other choices look really good. So you do have to do the math. You wouldn't have been able just to guess this, okay? So here we have evaluating of expressions. So we have a little bit of algebra mixed in with our basic math skills of integers. I have to do z squared minus y plus x. So I'm going to show you what that looks like plugged in. I have to square all of z, and z is -4. So I have to take -4, and I have to square it. Minus y, y is 5. I have to be really careful that I plug in the right number. It's very easy to pick up the wrong number here. Now it's plus x, and x is 2. -4 squared means -4 times -4, which is a positive 16. Order of operations is hugely important. When you are down to addition and subtraction, you do not just do addition first. Addition and subtraction are equals, and you need to work with them at the same time, okay? And whoever is first in the problem is the one that happens first. So I have subtraction, I have addition. When you read from left to right in almost all languages. But when you read from left to right. So we're going to start at the 16 and do 16 minus 5 is 11. Now I bring down the 2. 11 plus 2 is 13. And that is my answer. Okay? So our next slide. There's a lot of words here. I'm going to give you a full minute to try these two problems. Okay, so which of the following best represents the sentence? So we have the difference of twice a number and 6 is 400. So right on your test booklet, you see this word is, and we have equals. Now we see that word of, and I already told you a bunch of times that of means times, but let's be careful because sometimes we have to use the word of just to make the sentence sound grammatically correct. All right, so this of might not mean multiplication. It might just be a function of using the English language properly. The difference of twice a number and 6. So difference, we know, is subtraction. So I'm going to need a subtraction sign somewhere in my work. Twice a number. So if you're not sure what twice a number is, think about it, okay? If I had, 3 donuts, we'll go with the easy spelling of donuts. If I had 3 donuts and you had twice as much as me, well, that means you had 6 donuts, okay? So think about it in another problem if you're not sure of the word. So twice means you're doubling. You're multiplying by 2, okay? So twice a number can be X, it can be N. I'm going to use X because that's what our choices have. So I need to have twice a number. The difference of, well, that means I'm going to subtract the twice the number and the 6 is 400. So that's my choice B, okay? And if you weren't sure, you should have been able to at least eliminate C, right? It can't be C because it says difference. I know difference is subtract, and there's not a single subtraction sign in C. So even if you aren't sure, you should have at least eliminated C, and now you only have to guess between 3 possibilities and instead of 4. Okay, volume of a rectangular box. Volume is the amount of space that something can store. So volume of a box, hopefully you know, is length times width times height. So if you are going to use a formula to solve any problem like volume or area, you should definitely write your formula first, okay? Now that we have our formula written, we're going to plug in what we know. So 10 inches long, that 10 is going to go for the L. 5 inches wide, that 5's going in for the width. And 2 inches high, weren't they nice? They put them all in the exact order that we typically memorize our volume formula in. Now we're going to multiply. Going from left to right, 10 times 5 is 50, and 50 times 2, that's 100. So our choice is B, and they were nice. They didn't even try to trick us with the label of volume. Volume is always labeled in cubic measurements, and these were all inches. So it was a very fair problem. They didn't try to trick us with anything, okay? All right, so you can also see some charts on this test. So I'm going to give you a minute to look at the chart, read the question carefully. Okay, so the chart below represents the number of days that had rain per month in West Newbury. Which month shows the largest increase from the month before? So increase means it has to go up. And we've got 4 choices here, so I'm going to focus on these choices. So if I look at June, okay, and the month before, May, so here's June and the month before, is that an increase? That actually went down. That's a decrease. So it's not A. So now I'm going to look at November. Here's November way up here. The month before was October. So did we experience an increase? Well, sure, because October was at between 6 and 8. October was at a 7. And November, wow, November went up to 14. So this is an increase of 7. Okay. Let's see, from October to the month before. Okay, well, this is an increase. This is at between 4 and 6, so we'll say 5. So we had 5 in we had 5 in September, 7 in October. That's an increase of only 2. So it's clearly not that one. Let's go to February. Here's February, where they experienced, I guess, 10 inches or 10 days. And if we look at the month before, they were at 2. So if we were at 2 and we went to 10, that's an increase of 8. February was definitely the largest increase. Okay. Okay. I'm going to give you a little bit of time for this. I'll give you a minute for these 2 questions. See what you can do. Okay, I'm realizing there's something wrong with problem number 16. Yeah, let's skip 16. There's a problem here. I'm not quite sure what the problem is. Okay, so we're going to go to 17. I'm going to give you 20 seconds. Okay, so for number 17, this is a 2-step equation. Okay, this is a question testing testing your algebra skills. Okay, we're testing to see that if you've learned this. So again, everyone's coming from different places, and that's okay. We're trying to get an idea of what you have seen and what you haven't. So if you haven't seen this, don't panic about it. You will see it during the course of this year at some point in your class. So here we have an algebraic equation, and our goal is to get x alone. So what we want to do is move the other numbers out of the way. So hopefully we know that we're going to kind of work in backwards order of the order of operations. So we need to move this 36 out of the way first, and this is a positive 36. Whatever we do to the left side, we need to do to the right, because math is all about fairness. So I need to take 36 away from this side. I'm going to draw myself a little imaginary line here, because the equal sign is keeping the left and the right side of the equation separate. So if I want this equation to stay true and equal, that's what I need to do. So I'm going to take 36 from the left side and take away 36 from the right side. Now, if I look on the left-hand side, a positive 36 and a negative 36, they're opposites of each other. They cancel each other out. So what I'm left with here is a negative 5x. I'm going to do some math over here. I have a positive 11 and a negative 36. So hopefully you know that if I put a positive 11 and a negative 36 together, that's going to be a negative number, because the 36 has more negativity than the 11 has positivity. and I'm going to get the difference between 36 and 11, and the difference between them is 25. So now I have that negative 5x is equal to negative 25. So negative 5 times something, and I don't know what that something is yet, has to equal a negative 25. So to get this negative 5 out of the way, this means negative 5 multiplied by x. So I need to do the inverse. I need to do the opposite, which is divide by negative 5, being sure I do that to both sides to be fair. Negative 5 divided by negative 5 is 1, so those cancel out and leave me with just x. And I come over here, and a negative 25 divided by negative 5 is a positive 5. So my answer for x here is very clearly a positive 5. Alternatively, if you aren't comfortable with solving a two-step equation like this, you could plug in numbers, okay? And be smart. If you're going to do that, be smart about which numbers you're going to plug in for your x. I probably don't want to start off plugging in a 9 2/5 because that's going to be the more difficult computation. So maybe I leave that one alone for a minute, and I'll go to B and say, okay, if I have 36 minus 5 multiplied by negative 5, will it equal 11? So I'm going to bring down the 36. I'm going to say, okay, if I have a positive 5 times a negative 5, that would give me a negative 25. And is 36 minus a negative 25 going to give me 11? Well, it's not, because if I do this math, I'm going to get 36 plus 25 is actually going to be 61. And it does not equal 11, so it can't be choice 5. All right, that took a lot of time because I'm talking through it with you, but you probably could have plugged that in faster. So then you move on to choice C, move on to choice D. Okay, so definitely go with your gut. If you think that one of these probably isn't the answer, don't start off by checking that one. Okay, 20 seconds tops for a question like this. Okay. It's actually trickier than I thought. So hopefully we know what all of these properties are, and I'll talk about each one a little bit. The problem with this question is some people are going to see the parentheses and automatically assume, oh, it's the associative property because it has parentheses. Sorry, it's not the associative property for this one. And some people might say, oh, it's the distributive property because there's a number outside the parentheses with multiplication, and it's not that one either. Okay, we have to look really carefully at what's happening. We have the same numbers and we have the same operation, but what happened here? We have a 2 and a 3 in the parentheses on the left side. And we have a 2 plus 3 on the parentheses on the right side. The stuff inside the parentheses didn't change, so it's not the associative property. There's parentheses on both sides of the equation, so nothing was distributed. So this answer is actually the commutative property because they changed the order. They said 4 times the parenthesis is equal to the parenthesis times 4. So it's definitely the commutative property, but they did make it look like it could have been something else, okay? The distributive property would have been something, I'll use the time sign even though I don't like using the X, but this problem did. The distributive property would have been something like this. If you had 2 times 3 plus 5, distributive property would have been changing it to 2 times 3 plus 2 times 5. Okay, because what you're doing is you're bringing that number that's being multiplied into both numbers in the parentheses. Associative property would have been if you had something like 5 plus 7 plus 9 on one side, but on the other side you change it so that the 5 and the 7 are in the parentheses and the 9 is all by itself. Okay, commutative property is just switching the order. Okay, 5 plus 8 is equal to 8 plus 5. All right, and the inverse property is when you're doing the opposite. Okay, so the inverse of addition is subtraction. Okay, the inverse of multiplication is division. They're typically not going to put that on there. Oh boy. Okay, so that was a little bit of we went through all of those math problems. Okay, and we did them pretty quickly, but that's kind of the speed that you need to work on so that you can get to the problems that you know, and also go quickly through the ones that you don't know. The best way to practice these, to practice the math section, is to do questions over and over. So you can definitely use the 2 links that you were given earlier on the language part, Momentrix and Tutorfied. And Tutorfied will actually time you. So they'll give you questions and give you 15 minutes to solve them and then tell you they'll tell you if you got the answers right or not. But you can also print them out. So if you're taking the test on paper, you might want to print them out. But if you don't have a printer available, you can certainly do the problems online. Okay. I didn't expect to go that quick. So let's see here. Let's see. Mrs. Maloney, I'm sure I can fill in space with other math problems as well. I don't know if there was, if we needed to wrap up a certain way or not.
If you want to provide a challenge question or a question that just goes over something else, you
Okay.
have time. We have about 15 more minutes.
Okay. Okay. So. Yeah. I think I can insert another slide here. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. Because I mentioned order of operations, okay, I'm going to give everyone a minute to go through this problem to make sure that we can use order of operations effectively. Okay, so when we're starting this problem for order of operations, I'm going to put our little mnemonic device here. And the one that I hear students use most frequently is PEMDAS. And some students use gammas, which is the same thing: grouping, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. Okay, so here we're going to make sure that we're working with our parentheses first. And I actually see two sets of parentheses. This inside most parenthesis is not really a parenthesis, that one right there. It is a parenthesis, but it doesn't quite mean parenthesis in PEMDAS. It's really there for visualization, to call your attention to the fact that, hey, I'm holding a negative number, okay? So when there's parentheses around a negative number, you can rewrite it so that that set of parentheses isn't there, and it might make this problem look a little bit less confusing. So we're gonna start with our parentheses, and we're gonna do the math inside. 8 plus -5. Again, we wanna make sure we know our rules with negatives, with integers, okay? 8 is stronger, it has a larger absolute value, so our answer is going to be positive. And the difference between 8 and 5 is 3. And actually I don't want to use parentheses anymore because I have it down to one number. I'm going to bring the rest of everything else down, making sure to copy everything correct. So I did parentheses. There are no exponents. Multiplication and division has to happen in order from left to right, but I don't need to worry about that because there's actually only one multiplication, and the multiplication is 3 times 4, which is 12. So I'm going to bring everything else down. Everything left, I'm looking at what's left. I have subtraction, another subtraction, and an addition. So I just have addition and subtraction. And again, I purposely made a subtraction come first because you have to go in order from left to right. You cannot just do the addition first because A comes before S in PEMDAS. So we have to start at the left. We're going left to right, whatever happens in that order. So 10 minus 3 is 7. I'm going to bring everything else down. Okay? And I know I keep mentioning the amount of time that you have. Just because there is not a lot of time, just because you have a lot of questions in a limited amount of time, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't show your work. You should show your work because, as I said, what you want to do is get the questions right that you can get right. Okay, so this is a question that you should be able to do correctly. And you want to make sure it's right. And if you do this in your head, you're probably going to make an error, or it's very possible that you make an error. So 7 minus 9, that's going to give us a -2. And we're going to add 12. So -2 and a positive 12 is going to give us 10. Okay, so this is a question that you can definitely get right. And the biggest thing that you can do to help yourself is write this out. Do your order of operations. Make sure that it looks like that triangle that it's supposed to look like. Okay? We're going to try another one of the word problems because those can be a little intimidating, but a lot of times I find that the words make it seem worse than it is. So here we have, what number is 6 more than 1/3 of 90? Okay, so I'm going to give you a moment to sort of dissect that problem. Okay, I'll even tell you the multiple choices. The multiple choices are 30 because it is all multiple choice anyway. Okay, so what number is 6 more than 1/3 of 90? So 6 more than is 6 plus 1/3 And then we have that of again, and of is multiplication. So this is really just an order of operations problem that only has 2 steps, okay? So more than is going to be our addition. Of is our multiplication. So 90 multiplied by 1/3, I'm going to make that over 1. And we can have that, this is 90 over 3, or I can cross reduce. 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 90 divided by 3 is 30. So 6 plus 30 is 36. Okay. You might also see some problems that have some algebra in it. So we're going to do a little bit of algebra work too. For example, 3x squared plus 9x plus 10x squared plus 5y plus negative 11x. Okay? So I want you to try to simplify that. I'm going to put our choices here. And if you've never seen that, that's okay. Just give it a shot. Look at it for a moment. Think about if you were forced to pick one of these answers. What would you pick? Oops. So you have a 25% chance of guessing correctly, even if you have no idea. So again, just take a minute, think about what could you do? Okay, so this problem is pretty intimidating. Not only do you have variables, but you have 2 variables and you have exponents, okay? And what's interesting is algebra can be pretty scary, but a lot of it boils down to either 1st grade math or 5th grade math. And this, technically, I can relate to 1st grade math. When you did word problems, something like, you know, John has 3 cars and 5 trucks. A lot of times your questions would say, how many vehicles does he have in all? But if I just said, how many cars does he have in all? Well, he would only have 3 cars because he can't add 3 cars and 5 trucks. So the basics of algebra is you have to remember your rules of math. You can only add things that are the same, okay? When you add fractions, you can't add them if they have a different denominator. You have to make them have the same denominator. So in algebra, you can only add things that are the same. So I have here 3x squared and 10x squared. Those are the same. Whatever x is, I don't know what it is, but it means the same thing, okay? If x is 7, then it's always 7. So I can take 3x squared and 10x squared and add them together and get 13x squared. So now I'm going to keep looking at this expression. And I see that I have, oh, look here, I have a 9x and I have a negative 11x. And that's not fair because I have colors here. When you're taking your test, you're not going to have colors. So if you're trying to sort of highlight which ones are the same, what you can do is draw a line under one, draw a box around the other. Just be careful not to draw a line over that negative sign because you'll forget it's negative. Okay, so I have a 9x and I have a negative 11x. Those are both x's. So I can put those together, and a positive 9 and a negative 11 will combine to be a negative 2. And that x is kind of like the label. Like I had cars and I also had trucks. And now I look and I see that poor 5y is all by himself, all sorts of lonely. There's nothing to add. Oh, I thought I had a different color there. There's nothing to add that 5y to. So that 5y, I'm just going to bring him along for the ride because he's not the same as anybody else. So if we look, we have choice C and D that have the 13x squared. And I need the one that has the negative 2x. Oops, I made a copy error here. And the positive 5y. So my answer is going to be D. Okay? So it's intimidating, but when you come down to it, if you understand that you're just adding and subtracting the common terms, it's not that bad. Okay. Let's see. Oh, scientific notation. Let's do that because you've probably seen scientific notation in either your math and possibly your science classes. So this could be a good refresher. So what I was trying to do is give you problems that you have seen. You might just need a little memory refresher in. So 48,570, okay? And we want to write this in scientific notation. Okay, so I'm not going to show you the choices here, but I'm going to remind you, scientific notation, when you're working with labs, you're often dealing with measurements that are really, really large, or they could be really, really small, meaning that they're probably going to include a lot of zeros, and it's very easy to lose a zero. So scientific notation is for when you're dealing with large or small numbers, and you want to make sure that you keep your accuracy. Excuse me. So in scientific notation, what you want to do is you want to rewrite it so that you only have a digit in the ones place. And that digit has to be between 1 and 9, or including, okay? So that first leading digit has to be 1 or larger, and it has to be 9 or smaller. And then you're going to have your other digits, however many there are, times 10 to the something. Okay, that's scientific notation. So what I have to do is I have to take this original number, 48,570, and I need to move the decimal until I have a number that's larger than 1 and less than 10. Right now, my decimal is here, and I need to move my decimal 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So this is going to become 4, 8, 5, 7. I don't need that 0 at the end, but it has to be multiplied by 10 to the something. So I took a really large number, like 48,570, and I rewrote it as 4.8. The integer on that 10, it could be a positive or a negative. And that's usually the tricky part for everyone to decide. So is this integer, is that exponent, is it going to be a positive 4 or is it going to be a negative 4? If you took a number that was really large and you made it small, you need to counteract making that number so much smaller by giving it a positive exponent. So if your number became smaller, your exponent's going to be a large number. So it would be your positive exponent. And if you weren't sure, you could always look at your choices. And if you got to this problem, you would say, well, 10 to the 4th is going to be a 1 with 4 zeros. And then you could multiply it by this number as well. Okay? And you'll see that you'll get that 48,570. All right? So a lot of times you want to be able to do the problem without looking at the answer, but the answer can give you some hints. Okay, and you can also work backwards by taking that answer and seeing which one makes the most sense and which is going to work out for your problem. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Butterio.
You're welcome.